Welcome to this webinar on Guiding Principles for Evaluators, developed and disseminated by the American Evaluation Association. I am Julia Flint, a research assistant working with Word Farmers Associates. Program evaluation is often complex and demanding work. Guiding principles and related standards are very much needed. The American Evaluation Association, AEA, was formed 30 years ago, pursuing a mission to improve evaluation practices and methods. The guiding principles for evaluators considered in this webinar were adopted by AEA in 1994. The current revision was made in 2004. Here they are, AEA's guiding principles for evaluators in their briefest form. 1. Systematic inquiry. Evaluators conduct systematic, data-based inquiries about whatever is being evaluated. 2. Competence. Evaluators provide competent performance to stakeholders. 3. Integrity and honesty. Evaluators ensure the honesty and integrity of the entire evaluation process. 4. Respect for people. Evaluators respect the security, dignity, and self-worth of the respondents, program participants, clients, and other stakeholders with whom they interact. 5. Responsibilities for general and public welfare. Evaluators articulate and take into account the diversity of interests and values that may be related to the general and public welfare. These 5 guiding principles can't specify the many steps in planning and conducting an actual evaluation, with its various challenges in play. These guiding principles are guidelines, in this case those accepted by the National Professional Organization, and nothing more. Understanding and applying these guided principles to real-life programs place demands on the education, experience, skills, and values of evaluators and the assistants on their staffs. So this webinar presents some of the most important issues related to the practical application of each principle. Let's get started. First principle, systematic inquiry. Evaluators conduct systematic, data-based inquiries about whatever is being evaluated. This is a simple principle to remember. It means that evaluation is a kind of social science research, and like other sorts of research, evaluation is systematic and it asks questions with the aim of getting answers from data. And none of what's involved is simple. If evaluators are naive about the purposes, methods, or interpretation of research, their work is unlikely to meet this standard. You can imagine the complexities. Evaluators must confidently determine answers to questions such as, what are the right evaluation questions? What are the most important data needs? What are the most effective and feasible methods for gathering data? What methods of analysis are most appropriate? How should findings be shared? And what do interim findings suggest both about changes needed in the program and changes needed in the evaluation? Considering the complexities, it's easy to see why amateurs, for example clients who decide to do their own evaluations, actually lack the knowledge and skills that good evaluation requires. Systematic data-based inquiry for program evaluation is an iterative process. Evaluators use early data collection and analysis to shape later data collection and analysis. This kind of inquiry involves stakeholders in both divergent and convergent processes to frame meaningful evaluation questions and methods. In other words, systematic evaluation starts with a system for creating evaluation questions. The evaluator seeks the perspectives of stakeholders, being sure to include relatively powerless stakeholders, and coordinates and assimilates stakeholder input throughout the entire evaluative process. The value of stakeholders' perspectives depends in part on the evaluator's effective communication about the purposes and progress of the evaluation. Divergent processes engage stakeholders in identifying many ideas about what they want to learn about program purposes, operations, activities, and outcomes, and about how the evaluator might go about learning these things. Group meetings and focus groups are often helpful in this regard. For example, evaluators often hold brainstorming sessions with stakeholders to generate many possible evaluation questions of interest to different constituencies. Convergent processes engage stakeholders in helping the evaluator identify the most promising possibilities that have been raised in regard to learning about the value of the program and its different features. Working sessions with groups of stakeholders and interviews with individuals with particular knowledge of the program are useful for pointing the evaluation team toward the most pressing issues. These processes guide the team as it works to bring what's most important into focus. In short, divergent processes create choices by identifying many alternatives. Convergent processes help the evaluation team make choices from among the many alternatives. Creating good evaluation questions must be understood as a key part of the systematic inquiry required for program evaluation. But systematic inquiry also requires data collection and analysis procedures that address evaluation questions fully and efficiently. This work requires clear protocols, plans, instructions, training, and data gathering tools, so that all members of the evaluation team can follow the evaluation plan and collect useful data with the specified tools. Quality control is essential. Evaluation team leaders must monitor the process from plan to data collection to analysis, including interim results, to ensure the integrity of the evaluation effort. In other words, to ensure the system, as in systematic inquiry, functions well. Second principle, competence. Evaluators provide competent performance to stakeholders. Understanding the breadth and depth of education, experience, and skills implied in the first principle has a key implication. This principle captures that implication. Evaluators and evaluation staff have varied educational and practical experience. Their skills and specialties vary. Hence, this principle implies that evaluation staff assume responsibilities appropriate to their background. Relatively few evaluators are technically competent to design and lead a large, complex evaluation project. Many evaluators are competent to take on a role as part of an evaluation team, and some evaluation staff should take on strictly limited functions. One can see a career ladder for evaluators in such distinctions. Whatever the evaluator's role, though, technical competence is not enough. Cultural competence is also needed. Cultural competence enables evaluators to ensure inclusion of different perspectives, to accurately interpret information, and to respect diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, and class. As an evaluator, one demonstrates cultural competence in awareness of one's own culturally based assumptions, commitment to understanding the perspectives of culturally different stakeholders, sensitivity in interactions, particularly in speech, and use of appropriate evaluative procedures that are culturally sensitive. If asked to take on a role that goes beyond their expertise and cultural capacities, evaluators should decline the role. Evaluation staff, including evaluation leaders, are professionally obligated to take on only those efforts that are within the limits of their education, experience, and skills. In declining a role, or even an entire project, evaluators should explain the likely negative effects of their lack of expertise. If circumstances nonetheless demand performing a role for which they don't feel fully competent, evaluators should immediately improve their competence through professional courses and workshops, independent study, or observing more expert evaluators. Given the legality of the options under consideration, ethical dilemmas in evaluation require thoughtful consideration to determine the course of action that is most just. Such dilemmas require consideration of which groups or individuals are likely to suffer the most harm, and which groups or individuals are likely to reap the most benefit. Such consideration illuminates the embedded vested interests. It's also a matter of proportion. Do the benefits far outweigh the magnitude of harm? If so, it is probably possible to make changes that further minimize possible harm. In these determinations, both technical and cultural expertise come into play. Third principle, integrity and honesty. Evaluators display honesty and integrity in their own behavior and attempt to ensure the honesty and integrity of the entire evaluation process. The concept of ensuring the honesty and integrity of the evaluation is the centerpiece of this principle. The actual responsibilities, though, are not evident to those outside the field, and this includes some or many clients. Most obviously, evaluators must negotiate honestly with sponsors and relevant stakeholders in deciding the evaluation costs, tasks, and products, reports, presentations, and so on of a proposed evaluation project. The evaluator is responsible for ensuring that the negotiated evaluation plan is realistic, cost-effective, respectful of the person or agency requesting the evaluation, as well as its stakeholders and the public interest overall. The other implicit responsibilities may not be so obvious, however. For instance, evaluators are responsible for ensuring that clients understand that evaluation is a systematic, data-based inquiry in which outcomes cannot be predetermined. Evaluations need to be transparent, honest, and verifiable. The spirit of skepticism and intersubjectivity or objectivity must prevail to ensure the honesty of the effort. Thus, evaluators must be explicit about their clients, and other stakeholders' interests and values concerning the conduct and variable or possible outcomes of an evaluation. Ethical responsibilities related to conflicts of interest are easier to grasp. Disclosure responsibilities include the evaluator's obligation to identify any relationships that might pose a conflict of interest, or even the appearance of a conflict, with their role as an evaluator. In some cases, these relationships rule out the evaluator's participation. Even so, any remaining potential conflict of interest should be acknowledged in evaluation negotiations and reports. Additionally, all evaluation reports should disclose the source of the request for the evaluation and all sources of financial support for the evaluation. As the evaluation progresses, evaluators should record and report changes in the evaluation plan, as well as the reasons for the changes. This responsibility is crucial for changes that are likely to affect the findings of the evaluation significantly. In such cases, and before implementing the changes, the evaluator should inform the client, describing the potential impact of the changes. If evaluators discover that a data collection or analytic procedure is likely to yield misleading results, they should communicate their concern. Misleading results can refer to findings that lead readers or stakeholders toward unwarranted conclusions or inferences. For instance, small differences in important measures can mislead naive readers to conclude that statistically significant findings have practical importance, when often they do not. If discussions with the sponsor and other stakeholders can't resolve the concern, the evaluator might decline to continue the evaluation, or might consult experts and key stakeholders about ways to proceed. Maintaining the integrity of the project is perhaps best accomplished through continuing communication and interaction with stakeholders. This can be done through interim evaluation reports, both print and electronic, oral reports, meetings and work sessions, email and website postings, webinars, and one-on-one discussions. Fourth principle, respect for people. Evaluators respect the security, dignity, and self-worth of respondents, program participants, clients, and other evaluation stakeholders. Professional ethical standards and regulations acknowledge and guard against risks, harms, and burdens that might be incurred by participants in the evaluation. Such standards include getting informed consent for participation in the evaluation procedures, as well as ensuring participants' confidentiality and informing them about the scope and limits of that confidentiality. Evaluators should make sure that stakeholders or other participants contributing data or possibly incurring a risk do so willingly and with knowledge of and opportunity to obtain any benefits of the evaluation. Of great importance, program participants must be clearly informed that their eligibility to receive services does not depend on their willingness to participate in the evaluation. Negative findings or warranted criticism, criticism justified by findings, can affect the evaluation sponsor or other stakeholders in adverse ways. The possibility of such findings should be made clear at the outset of the evaluation. Evaluators can minimize harmful impact, but only to the extent that such an effort doesn't compromise the integrity of the evaluation or damage the public good. When reporting negative results of this sort, evaluators should gather information and communicate results in a manner that is respectful of the stakeholders' dignity and their sense of self-worth. Input about interim and final evaluation reports should be solicited from stakeholders prior to completion and presentation of the report. Stakeholders can be consulted through the communication and interaction methods listed earlier for input on the report's accuracy, adequacy, clarity, format, and most importantly, the appropriateness of its conclusions and recommendations. If appropriate, evaluators can also solicit recommendation from clients and stakeholders about ways to disseminate the final report. Fifth principle, responsibilities for general and public welfare. Evaluators articulate and take into account the diversity of general and public interests and values that may be related to the evaluation. Evaluators have obligations to the common good. These obligations are especially important for evaluations of programs supported by public funds. Threats to the public good, however, remain relevant in any program evaluation. Why? Because the public good almost never coincides with interests of any particular group. Evaluators' outlook on the worth of programs needs sufficient scope to include concern for the welfare of society as a whole. This responsibility relates as well to the client's understanding that evaluations are substantive and that favorable results depend on what the evaluation finds. Evaluators' necessary commitment to the sponsor who funds or requests the evaluation can place them in a difficult position when it conflicts with other stakeholders' interests or those of the common good. Clients want favorable reports and, to get them, occasionally insist on changes or procedures that violate the requirements of honesty and integrity. Confronted with such challenges, evaluators must try to resolve the conflicts with the client, and as needed, with the involvement of other stakeholders. If the conflicts can't be resolved, the evaluator is justified in ending the evaluation. Clients, of course, can always find other evaluators, so resolving the issue is nearly always better than withdrawal. While the findings of one particular program evaluation usually do not have a clear effect on public or private policy, evaluation results are more likely to exert appropriate influence if they are presented clearly and simply, and if they are widely disseminated. Interim and final evaluation reports can take many forms, and judicious use of presentation and dissemination forms can heighten the impact of a report. In summary, the 5 AEA principles for evaluators provide guidelines for developing plans and making decisions that foster effective, thorough, and ethical inquiry and optimize the impact of evaluation results and recommendations. Once again, the 5 principles are systematic inquiry, competence, integrity and honesty, respect for people, and responsibilities for general and public welfare. The guiding principles are particularly useful when evaluators confront dilemmas or difficult situations in the course of their work. In explaining evaluation choices, some alternatives that might interest clients have to be ruled out on the basis of the principles. Excluding the views of some stakeholders or participants, for instance, can violate several of the principles. For example, systematic inquiry, respect for people, and responsibilities for the common good. In such cases, clients need to hear clear and careful explanations of appropriate evaluation procedures from the evaluation team, and the principals can help. The program evaluation standards, developed by the Joint Committee on Standards for Educational Evaluation, are also helpful. A list of the 30 standards is accessible at the URL on this last slide.